Up, Fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and tonight is a very different interview than the norm for us. Of course, the theme is mixed martial arts, but instead of the sport itself, we will be talking mixed martial arts movies, and that being the FITE TV exclusive film Cagefighter Worlds Collide, which comes out on the service on May 16th. With me tonight is the director of that aforementioned film, and he is Jesse Quinones. Jesse, thank you for the time to talk some Cagefighter Worlds Collide.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of Sherdog, and it's an honor to kind of be on here talking about my movie.
Now we're definitely going to get into that being a fan of Sherdog stuff, but before, obviously we will get into talking the movie and all these different things. But when I usually talk with fighters, often I want to know about like kind of what their background was to get them into fighting. So I'm curious, What is your journey getting into the movie industry, getting into directing? What is your? Did you go to film school? Did you spend a lot of years being a production assistant and going through the paying the dues and all that stuff? Like, what's your journey into this kind of line of work?
That definitely paid my dues. So basically, I'm originally from Miami, but I moved to London, England, back in 2000. So I've been here for 20 years, and went to university, studied theater and creative writing for a BA. Then I did my MA in film production, and out of university, tried many different things. I was a playwright. I've made documentaries and short films and things like that, and then I made my first feature film back in 2014. And I lecture. I still make commercials, things like that. And Cagefighter Worlds Collide is my second feature film. It's a project I've been kind of putting together for about 5 years. And my probably two of my biggest passions are martial arts and film. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 10 years. Got my black belt a couple of years ago, and so this was like me putting my two loves together and being able to work with like the Chuck Liddells and the Luke Rockholds is like a dream come true, really. I don't get too starstruck with actors, but fighters is a different story,
And I was gonna ask, okay, so how did you get, to get this gig for Cagefighter? But now knowing it's something you've been personally working on for a long time, and the background you have in martial arts, so what was like? How did you go about it? Was it something that you're working on the script, you had the general idea, and then you had to go about selling it to networks and stuff like that, and like how did it come about that FITE TV is the place that this movie would get produced and come about?
So I was working on the script for about 5 years, just on my own steam as a spec script. And then, what happened was I met the producers, Shane Putzlocker and Sarah Shack, who are based in Canada, and presented the project to them. They really were attracted to the idea of a story that straddled the worlds of both MMA and professional wrestling. And they kind of took the ball and ran with it. They brought the finance together. They brought me out to Canada. They were tenacious and made sure this film happened. Within a year of meeting them, I was on set shooting. And in terms of the FITE TV, that was them, putting that deal together. It's a very exciting deal. FITE TV obviously known for delivering to MMA fans, wrestling fans, combat sports. And it just felt like a great fit where we were able to put the film on a platform where the audience was there and they were aware of it. Because one of the things I try to do with this movie is that I didn't want to have to bring the audience up to speed of like, this is MMA and this is wrestling. I wanted to deliver the movie to people that knew the world of this, knew the MMA world intimately, and that they could get all the inside jokes and the inside humor and things like that, So it felt like a perfect fit.
Now, I'm a serious, film fan. I'm always fascinated by like casting and how people land specific roles. So I have several questions on that because you have an eclectic group that's working with you in this one. First, your lead is an actual 9-year veteran of mixed martial arts, and Alex Montagnani. What made Alex the right pick for the character of Reese, this legendary fighter in the story? And did he do something that made him stand out in auditions? Did you know him previously from, he's also London based, you had known him for a long time. And were there other former, or current fighters also that were in consideration for that role?
I've known Alex for about 11 years. I met him training jiu-jitsu, actually. We used to train at the same school. We sparred many times. And what happened was, as I was growing as a filmmaker, I put a teaser together for this movie back in 2014, and I wanted just like a proof of concept kind of thing.
Mm.
And I needed somebody for the teaser, and I said, hey, would you be down to be in it?
Mm.
And he did it. It was not like any dialogue. It was just almost done like a music video kind of thing.
Okay.
But I noticed he was really comfortable on screen, and he obviously could do the fighting because I had seen him in the cage. I've actually rolled with him, so I know what he's like. And he just felt like a good fit. And then fast forward a few years, I was putting this together, and we did have somebody else in mind, because sometimes when you're packaging a movie, you need to have a name, kind of thing. And that didn't work out, and we were left in a situation where we were about a month out from shooting. And Alex had already been on the project anyway because he was basically the fight choreographer, and he designed all the fights. Me and him kind of spent a year just constructing the choreography. We would do pre-visualizations and everything. And so we were in this situation where we were a month out, and my ticket was booked for Canada, and I was talking to Shane and Sarah about it, and we're like, we need to cast this role. And there was like two ways you could go. You could go with an actor and bring them up to speed with the choreography, or you could go with the fighter.
Yeah.
And it just became a situation where we just didn't. I don't think there was an actor out there that could really learn all that choreography. And also going for any fighter, it's like, do we know that they're going to be able to deliver on the emotional stuff? And Alex just became the unanimous choice. He was the guy. And even so, I think he probably still did about, I'm not even exaggerating, probably 25 self-tapes over a weekend. Audition after audition to really make sure, because it's a big investment from the, everybody, everyone's put a lot of time, and we needed to be certain. And he delivered on the auditions and did a fantastic job. And it was an absolute incredible experience to see him evolve as an actor. We flew him out about 2 weeks before we started shooting. He had like an actor's boot camp. We really dug deep into the character, and I mean, I told him, you're gonna have to give your heart, mind, and soul for this role, and he did.
In a lot of ways, Alex, it makes obvious sense for his character, but how did you guys decide on Jon Moxley? Because that makes a ton of sense too. AKA Dean Ambrose, former WWE champion, current AEW champion. He's playing Randy Stone in the movie. Because the film, like its title, is about worlds colliding, it's the concept of MMA versus pro wrestling, like you said. Was he someone the decision makers on the film, like yourself, always kind of visualized and envisioned for this character? Was he a name that kind of was suggested as the process started, and it just seemed, this guy fits Randy Stone? Like, how did he become a part of this? And because he's such a big name.
He is. That was down to Shane and Sarah. They brought on Jay Riso, who many wrestling fans will know as Christian, and he came on board as an executive producer.
Okay.
And he also has a role in the film. And we had a conversation about, obviously we knew this was a big role, and we needed somebody with a great deal of clout, somebody that had had a name in the wrestling world, but also who could act. And Riso suggested Jon Moxley, and it was kind of perfect timing, to be honest. It was just as he was leaving WWE. Because if he was still there, that might have been a tricky scenario. But he was just leaving, so he's kind of free to do what he wanted. And we sent him the script. He had notes, he had ideas, of course. But what was really cool is that he found something to connect with in the character, and I mean, he's incredible. I can see why he's such a superstar. I mean, him on set, he's so creative. His contribution to the choreography he's just a gifted storyteller. He knows how to use his body to tell stories, and it was amazing to watch him kind of and just sort of be able to kind of collaborate with him on set.
And then you mentioned Jay Riso. He's a lot of people know Christian, from another former WWE heavyweight champion. Now we also have Luke Rockhold's in the movie, which I love the fact Luke Rockhold's character's name of Tony Gunn, like the perfect douchey kind of guy name, like Tony Gunn. He looks like a Tony Gunn.
He does.
He said he fits Tony Gunn. Like, I was talking to him a couple days ago about it. But also Chuck Liddell's in it, in a key character.
Yeah.
He's playing Marcus. He's Reese's like mentor, coach, and stuff like that. How did because you mentioned you're such a big fan of the sport, and you kind of actually fanboy a little bit for the fighters.
Yeah,
were those two guys you envisioned and you purposely wanted? Did they just work on? And why was Chuck the pick for this Marcus character among a lot of various options I'm sure you probably could have had?
I think that Chuck is a legend, and I wanted I wanted Reese to have a coach where, I like the idea of like the lines being blurred a little bit, and I wanted that coach figure to be somebody that Alex, the actor, respected, not to, as well as Reese,
Right.
the respecting Marcus, and it needed a big character. It needed somebody who had that track record and who could validate that role. And Chuck was just felt like a really great choice, and he has a swagger, he has a certain respect. I mean, he's a legend. You can't say that about many MMA fighters,
Yes.
and he's one of them.
Yeah.
And when we, that it was sort of Shane. We didn't really have a casting director, so Shane reaching out to his agent. I mean, Chuck had some notes, and that was a great part about working with people like him and Luke. It's like, I love MMA, but I have never stepped in the cage, and I've got too much respect to pretend that I know all the intricacies of the sport like that. And Chuck had lots of specific little notes about just authenticating certain moments, and I would be a fool not to listen. And same with Luke; he had ideas about his character to give him a specialism in his sort of craft as a coach. He wanted him to focus on a specific technique in working with Alex's character. And for me, it was like it was a kid in a candy store getting to work with these legends, and also just as a director, using all of this amazing knowledge and incorporating it into the narrative. And it was amazing because we could have got an actor to play that part, but I felt like they would have just been acting. Whereas Chuck was drawn from real stuff, and he's talked about it. He drew on his own relationship with John Hackelman, and it was just so. I mean, there was one scene in particular where he's kind of giving Reese a pep talk. And I said, why don't you, when you're giving this pep talk, maybe draw on the biggest victory of your own career. And he talked about his own, second fight with Randy Couture. And I mean, just having that moment to dramatize that was like electricity. I mean, you could tell it was coming from a real place. And I just loved it. I was almost sitting there with tears in my eyes watching this guy, this big old Chuck Liddell pouring his heart out into this moment.
Hollywood has a really rich history of boxing films, yet with MMA, they really still haven't seemed to gotten it right yet. Aside from Warrior, which is well-respected MMA film, many MMA-themed movies haven't gained traction with a broader audience. A lot are often kind of like direct-to-video films, stuff like that. I know, like, there's a few series and stuff like that. Why do you think, as a person that's had to write this movie, put it together, find that right kind of recipe that people wanted to gravitate to and produce, why do you think Hollywood hasn't found that right way to tell an MMA story? Is it a lack of understanding, on the sport in the industry? Does Hollywood maybe on some level look as MMA still as taboo and it doesn't take it serious? From your perspective, why is that they haven't really gotten to that level yet?
I think I can speak from my own experience because I was pitching this project about 4 years ago. At that time, I think MMA needed a big resurgence. It needed to basically become more popular as a sport. When I was first pitching it, it was a couple of years after Warrior had come out. And, Warrior was a great film, but it did very bad financially. It really tanked. And that didn't help. That was a big movie, and it lost people a lot of money. And I think that over the years, what I've noticed is, when you have UFC being sold for $4 billion, and you got Conor McGregor becoming a global superstar and fighting Floyd Mayweather, it made the whole sport rise. And I think, what's that saying? Like, all tides, the tide rises with all ships or something like that. And I think, the sport being more popular, the stars being more popular, I think it's really created a great environment to make more stories in this genre. And, I would love to, see more MMA movies. I don't think that Cagefighter Worlds Collide coming out means that others can't. I hope I know that Halle Berry's got a movie coming out, and other The Rock's been talking about doing something, and if this goes well, I've definitely got another one up my sleeve, in the same thing. So I think that this is an exciting time, and boxing. How many boxing movies has there been, or baseball movies, or football movies? So I think MMA is just at the beginning, and that's really exciting because there's a lot of stories to tell. There's a lot of colorful characters in this world.
every director has a vision for what they want to put on film. I mean, you have even more so because you this is your baby. You put this whole thing together. What was your vision for this movie and like this Legends League and the Legends Cage and stuff like that? Were you trying to go for gritty reality base? Did you want to go a little higher with fictionalization and try to make it more spectacle, entertaining, or is it a mix of both? And what were you trying to do to sort of get this and make this stand out? Because we just talked about how difficult it's been for MMA movies to make it stand out with fans and a general audience.
I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I wanted this to feel like a big movie. You know, nothing against Warrior, I love it, but I wanted to make something that felt exciting. I'm really fascinated by the business behind the scenes with the promoters and the agents and the trainers and the psychological stuff that happens behind. And I wanted something, you know, about a guy that's working out his demons in the cage, and the backdrop is the world of MMA, but it's, you know, all the pieces, you know, promoters and what they do. And it's not saying anyone is bad or right, the journalists, it's just showing the whole world, and this guy kind of at the center of it. And to be honest, you know, other movies have inspired me, but a big thing that inspired me was some of my favorite fights, you know, and the choreography. It'd be interesting for any hardcore MMA fans. Every fight in this movie is inspired by something they will have seen in real life, you know. And I really, that was probably one of the funnest parts, is devising the fights and, you know, taking a little piece of an Anderson Silva here or a John Jones there or a Randy Couture here, and really kind of creating this sort of collage of fights that were kind of inspired by really some of my heroes, you know.
For the people that do see this, not in the U.S. on the 16th, but in the rest of the other parts of the world, what do you hope? What would you like for them to take from this? And what's the message you hope to convey to fans of the sport already, of MMA and wrestling, and people that really don't closely watch either?
I think, you know, I mean, we myself and my team, you know, the whole crew, the cast, we poured our heart and souls into this thing. And I hope that, you know, one of the things that I think is really kind of compelling about this story, it's the story of a guy who, you know, ends up in a situation where he really has to dig deep and do some soul searching, you know, and it has some parallels to what's happening in the world right now. You know, this pandemic has kind of brought us as a society to our knees and, you know, knocked us on our ass.
Yeah.
And the message of this film is that no matter how hard you get knocked down, you can get back up. You know, and I think that that's something that resonates with what everyone is going through right now.
Yeah.